The Supermarine Spitfire F Mk.24 is the highest tiered prop fighter in War Thunder. Let's check it out. The legendary Supermarine Spitfire had its origins in the early 1930s as the British Air Ministry put out a series of successive requirements for new fighter aircraft. I'm gonna save a recap of the early history for when I eventually do a review of an earlier model of Spitfire. But for now, the plane first entered service with the Royal Air Force in 1938. The Spitfire was wildly successful, and was produced on dozens of different versions that were mainly split up by the engine they used, and then models and generations within the different engine lines. After a successful run with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Spitfire was adapted to the more powerful Rolls-Royce Griffon. The Griffon-powered Spitfires went through a long evolution during World War II, with refinements to the wing design, the armament, the propeller, the supercharger, and even the cockpit instrumentation. And in some cases, the performance improvements were significant enough that it was kind of hard to classify them as being the same type of plane as the early Spitfires from before the war. One of the major variants was the Mk.21, which used a powerful two-stage supercharged Griffon 61 engine and included major changes to the internal structure, the construction materials, along with a slightly redesigned 5-bladed propeller. This led to the Mk.22, which was similar but had better pilot visibility, along with a larger tail, which then led to the Mk.24. The Mk.24 was the very last model of Spitfire and featured hardpoints for external weapons, including rockets, additional fuel tanks, and improvements to the electrical system. The Spitfire F Mk.24 didn't enter service until just after the war in Europe had mostly wrapped up, but it was produced for several more years, and it flew all the way until 1955, although some other Spitfire versions were in service around the world for a while longer. What we get in War Thunder is the Spitfire F Mk.24. This is a fighter in rank 4 of the British Air Tree with a battle rating of 7.0, and is the highest tiered prop fighter in the game as of making this review. This plane's primary armament is a set of 4 Hispano Mark II 20mm cannons. Some people are real snipers with these things, but personally, for whatever reason, I've always found the 20mm Hispanos incredibly difficult to aim, more than almost any other gun in the game, and I really don't know why. So please forgive my crappy firing in the footage. The ammo belt selection includes a pretty good mix, but as of making this video, my suggestion is to use either the Air Targets belt or the Stealth belt for air combat. These guns now suffer the dreaded reel shatter mechanic, and although it's been patched and isn't anywhere near as bad as it was just a few months ago, you're still going to find occasional situations where you dump a few dozen rounds into a target at like point blank, and it seems to do almost no damage. Alternatively, you can use the Ground Targets belts, which have more AP rounds, and hope to score more direct hits on engines and cockpits. The loadouts you can take include dumb bombs and unguided rockets. Personally, I find the RP-3 rockets pretty difficult to hit individual targets with at anything beyond point-blank range, but the 500-pound bombs can do some respectable damage even if you won't be taking out bases in air battles or anything. The flight performance of the Mk.24 is, unsurprisingly, outstanding. This plane has excessive engine power, which not only gives it good top-end speed for a prop fighter, but also an excellent rate of climb, great energy retention, and strong acceleration at low speeds. In addition, like most Spitfires, the Mk.24 has really strong dogfighting agility, and its surplus engine power can really help avoid being energy trapped, and it'll let you get reversals by using vertical maneuvers to get someone off your 6, where the Mk.24 is going to be able to hold its energy a little bit better than most of its opponents. The catch though, and really the only downside with this plane, is that all of its performance is skewed towards higher altitude flying. Now, don't get the wrong idea. At low to medium altitudes, like down below 3,000 meters, the plane is still outstanding. It's just that it's even better up at higher altitudes, at least compared to other high-tier superprops. The only other real caveat to keep in mind is that, like many other single-engine fighters, the low-speed performance drops off pretty quickly once you get below around 250 kilometers an hour. For optimal performance, you'll want to try and stay above 450 or so if you can help it. No combat flaps, but it doesn't need them, and the wings won't rep until around 860 kilometers an hour. So if you're doing boom and zoom stuff, just try to watch the throttle when you dive in from high altitude. Taking this plane at an air battles is going to give you a pretty heavy learning curve, at least at first. The issue is, at BR7, you're frequently going to find yourself as the only prop in a jet match. This can be a blessing and a curse. You can out-dogfight basically any jet fighter you can get within 1 kilometer of, and if any of them are dumb enough to try turn fighting you at like medium to low speeds, it's basically a free kill. But the Mk.24 is still vulnerable to jet fighter boom and zoom tactics, even with its strong performance. Experienced opponents are going to make a gun pass on you, then just disengage and fly off at full throttle. In those situations, you're usually only going to get a couple of seconds maximum to try and take some shots on them before they get out of range. All in all, when you find yourself as the lone prop in one of these jet matches, it's usually going to be a really slow-paced game for you, as despite your good performance, it can be difficult to get into close-range fights before the targets are all shot down by someone else or they just keep flying away from you. Often, I just found myself flying out in the middle of the map, unable to catch anyone, and no one would come near me until I was the last guy left on the team, and those are really dumb matches, and they happen all the time in this plane. If you get into a down tier, it can almost be seal clubbing, as this thing really does outperform almost every other prop fighter in the game. The question of which prop fighter is the best in War Thunder is a debatable topic, but in my opinion, this is at least in the top 3. So if you get yourself into a down tier prop match, enjoy it while you can. In terms of ground attack, I wouldn't bother in air battles, but I found it surprisingly effective at close air support. Its rockets and bombs aren't easy to hit with, but if you connect, it's almost a guaranteed kill. Plus, it's great at fighter sweeps out over a ground battle, and low-tier ground attack jets can often be really easy kills. Visually, this is an absolutely beautiful aircraft. The paint jobs you get look wonderful and really show off the Spitfire's clean lines and the highly detailed 3D model. This is a great plane to look at. Landing is pretty basic prop fighter stuff, and if you've ever landed any of the other high-tier Spitfires, this one will feel very similar. No major caveats. You can drop gear and flaps at around 250 kilometers an hour. The cockpit on this plane has amazing visibility in all directions. Its instruments are mostly in good spots, but they're drawn on rather than modeled. Still, this is a pretty good cockpit in VR. To close out on the Spitfire F Mk.24. This plane has surplus engine power, excellent high-altitude performance, good dogfighting agility in most situations, and a good selection of ammo belts. However, it's literally a prop in a jet fight most of the time. The final verdict on the Spitfire F Mk.24 is that this is easily one of the best prop fighters in War Thunder, if not the best. But going up against mostly jets in the majority of matches can sometimes be a bit awkward. As always, thanks for watching.